Hi everyone, I am your host, Jade Haggard, podcasting from Art Universe Laboratory. Welcome to Artist Solace. Hello again, and thank you for listening. Welcome to Artist Solace. I am here in the studio of Indianapolis artist Justin Vining. I met him last year during a panel discussion hosted by the Arts Council titled Social Media for Artists, and he was on the panel. After hearing him discuss a little bit about himself and his use of social media, I thought he had an interesting story. And he seems to be doing some cool stuff throughout the city. He primarily works as a painter and, from what I have learned, earns a full-time income doing it. That in itself is fascinating to me because I always struggled to generate an income from my art, which I think a lot of people do as well. So we're going to learn more about him today and poke and prod at his brain to better understand what motivates and inspires him. Justin, thanks for being on the show, and thanks for letting me post up here in your new space. Introduce yourself, tell us what you have going on right now, and then we'll get into more of the questions.
Okay. Well, my name is Justin Vining. I am a full-time artist. I've lived off painting for 9 years now. I am based out of Indianapolis. I live and work downtown. And in terms of my art, I would consider myself now a plein air specialist, meaning I paint on location. I paint all around our city.
Okay. I did hear, though, you talk about painting on Monument Circle.
Yeah.
Okay, let's elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, I love painting on Monument Circle, and the variety of subject matter, even within that tiny little area of Indianapolis, is actually, I've painted it from almost every different angle, time of day, and it never seems to be the same. And kind of along with that, I also love that it's one of the most busy pedestrian areas of the city. So standing out there and handing out business cards and meeting people and just being visible is also helpful for business.
Such a smart move. Oh my gosh. I'm like, why didn't I think of that? That is great. Now, how did you, what inspired that idea?
Well, I guess going back, just a plein air painting in general, why did I start that? It was essentially in 2015 in the spring. I had built my first body of work in oil paints, and that work, if I learned anything, I learned I didn't know anything about oil painting, and so I wanted to become more fundamentally sound, and I thought painting them from observation would be a good exercise. What I did not expect was to become addicted to it. I really enjoyed it, and the longer I did it, the more I found that in the more public places, handing out business cards, the more you do that, it just helps drive business forward, and you ended up making sales and making connections, and a lot more lead generation than if I was just sitting in my studio room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you said you felt it was really rewarding to you then? Yeah.
So and I would say it was rewarding first and foremost, regardless of how it positively affected my business. I was just addicted to painting outside and painting from observation. It's really interesting. The studio paintings, when you're going to put 20, 40, 60, 80, sometimes 100 hours into a painting, there's so much planning that goes in beforehand that you really have to have sort of a predetermined destination. And when you have a predetermined destination, a lot of the exploration is removed. And so it becomes, once you're 20 hours into a 100-hour painting, you really are committed to that point. And so what happens when you're plein air painting and you're just outside in the elements, it might be wind, it might start raining, it might be snowing, you might be cold, you might have to use the restroom real bad, you might, all these different elements, you might have someone that's talking your ear off and I generally love the interaction of people, but sometimes people loiter for way too long, and you got all these different elements that make that challenging beyond even just the painting itself. And so then just talking about the painting on the face, making a painting in a couple hours standing in front of something, that's a challenge in and of itself. And so all these things put together, I am addicted to the process. I love the challenge. I find it way more analytical. And I was actually in Chicago this last weekend at a plein air painting event up there, and I was watching a panel of artists and a really established artist. It was so fascinating listening to him, how tired he got when painting, and not tired physically, tired mentally. And it's interesting because the more experienced I get, the more you can almost fall into a robotic mode where you're kind of like, well, I know how to do this song and dance because I've done it, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of times. And it's interesting to see someone so far in their career who's, way, way, way beyond that 10,000 hour plus of of an expert or whatever you would call it, to still just be so focused in the moment on that mental challenge and the task at hand. Because, once you go into the robot mode, I think decisions become weaker. And the more you can stay in the moment and the more you can keep your mind fit while painting, the stronger the paintings become. And that is almost a different type of being and shape than I've ever experienced in my life. I love it.
Yeah, I'm glad you elaborated on that, because I see it from a whole different perspective now. I can understand why that would be so rewarding, because because of the exploration aspect of it and the challenge. And,
totally.
You just don't know what you're gonna. This was a theme that was talked about on my last episode. You're kind of wandering into chaos.
Yeah.
But something is going to come out of it.
Yeah.
And
that makes sense.
You like that feeling.
I love it.
It's so rewarding. Okay,
yeah.
Interesting.
I like walking into a situation with, not a predetermined destination. Mm-hmm. So even when I go to Monument Circle, I've painted there dozens of times. The light might be hitting something different. All these things, and I kind of have an idea of where I'm going, but I don't really have a specific goal in mind other than I just want to create something beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Now, we're sitting in your studio surrounded by paintings.
Yeah.
Now, are all of these plein air paintings?
No. So a lot are. A lot of the smaller paintings are. There's kind of two rooms right here. I counted this morning. There's 64 paintings lining the walls right now. The majority of them are plein air, but there's probably about 30 of them that are studio paintings, like this one. Right to our right. It's one of my favorite paintings in the entire show, actually. But so I do a lot of studio work, and then we have this one to your left. It's not quite complete yet, but it's quite a bit different looking than the rest. It's inspired by my what I consider now sort of my older work, the more whimsical work. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit more stylized, mm-hmm. simplified, a lot more graphic. And these type of paintings, if I'm being super truthful, I don't necessarily love the process of painting them. They're really laborious. I'm not sure which is that, but the end result are just so beautiful. I just have to make them. And so I don't make a ton of them every year, but every year I make some for sure.
So you don't necessarily like the process, but you like the end result.
Yeah.
Okay.
These ones feel more like actual work than, especially the plein air painting, it never feels like work.
Ooh.
I go out there and I'm looking at one to your right. There's a beach scene from Mile Rock Beach in San Francisco.
This little tiny one?
It's to the left of it. It's like a beach scene. Yeah, it's in that square. That particular painting, that was my second painting of the day, but probably about halfway through the first painting that morning, I had to use the restroom really bad. This is probably TMI, but I'm in this remote part of San Francisco, and I'm just like, I don't know within my lifetime if I'll ever get back to this exact spot. And it's just like, I either paint it now or I don't. And so I just kept painting. And so then I did a second painting, and then I did a third painting. And then on my hike out, I wanted to do a fourth painting, but at that point, I just couldn't. I gotta go. And so I ended up doing, that's what this painting over here in this frame is. That's the same beach.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But I wanted to paint that scene on location, but I just couldn't. And so that's a challenge in and of itself too. Is just, sometimes you get to some of these beautiful locations, but there's more to it than just, being here painting, you're just like, oh my gosh. But like, I don't know. I hope I make it back to San Francisco. And if I do, painting in the streets is just as addicting. And so who knows if I'll make it back to that exact same scene. But to me, that little square painting, there's a life in that painting that, no offense to my studio painting over here, I think it's a really, really beautiful painting. I think the composition's incredibly complex. But I think there's something missing, or it's a little bit different. It's a little bit tighter. It's a little bit more real, and it's not as spontaneous as when you're just standing there making really, really quick decisions. With the studio painting, I can make a lot more intentional decisions, a lot more refined decisions, and it's still a really, really beautiful piece. But to me, it's I would have preferred to paint it on location.
Right, that one would be more rewarding to you in a sense.
Yeah,
because of the challenge.
Well, and so one of the things that I do when I paint on location like that is I even put weather reports in the back of the paintings. I put the time of day I finished the painting. So I put all the information, and sometimes if there is specific challenges, I'll write that on the back of the painting as well. So I think of them almost as little snapshots in time.
Now, you are having a show this Friday.
I am.
That's another thing I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
And all these paintings are going to be included.
Correct.
So tell us a little bit more about that. Tell everybody listening, the name of your studio, where it is, tell them all the information.
Sure.
So they can come and check it out.
So about a year ago, my brother and I, he's a lawyer, solo practitioner, we bought a building together. So it houses his law firm and then my studio gallery space. It's at 2620 East 10th Street, and so we're on the Near East Side, and we've spent about a year just building it out. The structure of it was really good, but we just pretty much cleaned it up, put up new drywall, and did a lot of the cosmetic things, just cleaning it up. And so this will be the first event hosted out of the building. And so I'm really excited about that. Historically, I've done a very big gallery show every March, and usually around 100 paintings. And last year we ended up, I think there was 116 paintings in the exhibit. This year, I know right now there's 103 on my hot sheet. Well, 104, I painted a new one yesterday. 105, sorry. And I'll probably have around 105-ish. I know I'm going to do another painting Thursday. And I'll do another Friday. So sorry, I'll sneak a couple more in.
I'm just thinking, man, it took one painting took me 5 years. To I'm going to do one tomorrow, Thursday.
Well, that's
maybe another one if I can.
That's what I think the beauty of observational painting is in alla prima painting is there's a rawness to it, and it's not necessarily my goal to paint quickly. I'm not trying to be a real fast speed painter or something like that. I think my goal is to capture specific moments and experiences and be very efficient doing it. And to me, a photograph is just not the same. And so, making my paintings look like paintings is something that I really enjoy to do. Okay. Because I think there's a lot of things that the human eye can do that a photograph can't. And so,
good point.
And even not even just the difference between the human eye and a photograph and the depth that we can see and how the photograph flattens everything and averages everything out. But I think beyond that is, as a human creating this thing, I can make more intentional decisions on the placement of objects within the piece. So it's not uncommon for me to change a scene completely as I'm painting it, either moving a car or taking a car out or moving a figure or taking a rock out or taking a distracting telephone pole out, right? I painted in Chicago on Saturday, and right through the middle of the painting would have been a street light, and just it wouldn't have helped the painting at all, so I just removed it. And so those are the types of things that, sometimes they're subtle and people never notice that you really do it, but, you have the license, I suppose, to, just make better decisions than what perhaps life is showing you.
Yeah. Now, so the show is called The Next Chapter.
Yep.
And I would like you to elaborate on what inspired the name.
Yeah, well, I think I try to be fairly straightforward when I'm titling a show. I sometimes ambiguous, lofty show titles don't really do much for you, so I try to be as direct as I can. And when thinking about what this move, moving my studio away from the Harrison Center, which I'm still super sad about. I love that place so much, but I think it's time for me to continue to develop in my career, and I really do believe that I would say absorbing the risk and taking the leap and investing in a building and investing in myself and opening up a gallery space. I do feel like Friday night is the beginning of the next chapter of my career, and I couldn't think of a better show title than that.
I see. That makes sense.
Yeah,
it's a good decision.
Thanks.
And so you have exactly 100 paintings?
I have more. So
okay.
I have more than 100 paintings. So there'll be at least 100 paintings.
Why do you choose to have shows in March?
Well, so it found me, and I've come to love it. And so the first March exhibit I had, it was given to me by chance. And I think that was my first March show. So it would have been 2016 was my first March exhibit. So I did 16, 17, 18, 19. This is my fifth. But what I found, I think most artists who are actively trying to sell their work, they're probably going to find that the winter months typically are slower. And what I've found is as I'm building a body of work, I'm not actively trying to sell all this work today. I'm trying to sell it Friday. And so as you're saving back work, to save back work through what's historically been a slower time of year anyways for me, I found that doubly beneficial. So I'm not trying to, make money while building a show. I'm just trying to build the show. And because hypothetically, if the summer months are always really good, let's just say, May is one of my better months every single year, and let's just say I'm just going to do my show in June. Well, it'd be very hard for me to find the balance between keeping work and having an inventory to sell, and also make, because the volume of sales I experience in May, I just don't think I could experience that volume of sales in January. And so March has really, I don't know, it's been a sweet spot. And I think for me, if it wasn't March, I think I think Kyle Ragsdale has the other sweet spot found. He does November every year. And so September through November is kind of, we in Indianapolis, we have Penrod in September, and that's usually my last show of the season. And so there's kind of a 2-month little sweet spot window in there where you really could build a show. And December is usually a good month just because of Christmas, but November, I think, if I didn't do March, I think I would do November.
You think it's because people are buying stuff for Christmas?
Well,
why do you think that is?
It's interesting because I think I don't necessarily, when I think about the timing of that, I think I'll use Kyle Ragsdale as an example. He's a really good friend, sells extremely, extremely well. I think his client base, no matter what month he does a show, is going to show up and invest in him and buy his work and support him. And similarly, I think I've had a lot of luck. I have a lot of people who really support what I do. I'm obviously super fortunate in that. And so I think, regardless of what time of year I choose to release this body of work, I think depending upon the time of year, I might have a little less sales or more sales but I think about it just from when do I have the window of time to truly invest in building it? When does that window exist? And so I don't want to use a window of opportunity when it's sort of when I'm selling, outside of this big event, and so those are really probably the only 2 windows that I have every year where I could sneak it in.
Yeah.
And so, because even though the 100 paintings, they come from the last 12 months, and I intentionally, I did these San Francisco paintings in November, and I've just held them back for the show. I haven't been actively selling them, even though I have sold a couple of them just to, inquisitive, interested people. It's really the last 2 months is when most of this work has happened. Mm-hmm. I found, for me personally, it's the best time to have a show like this.
Yeah. I agree. Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Now, Where are you from?
So I'm from Etna Green, Indiana. I grew up on a small farm up there and went to Triton High School in northern Indiana.
Northern Indiana,
Yeah,
okay.
and then it's about 2.5 hours north of Indianapolis, directly north. And then went to Purdue undergrad, and I studied art education.
Okay.
And then I became an art teacher, and I taught elementary art 3 years and loved it.
Okay. So how did, like, when did you realize you were interested in art?
So it would have been high school. My high school art teacher, he was super awesome, and he was really, really cool. And I was just like, if I could do any job in the world, I was like, I'd want his job. I mean, he just comes and paints with us and hangs out, and I don't know, it was cool. And that's really where it developed an interest in art. And I think a lot of people who are interested in the arts, if I had to guess, a lot of them, it probably was either the parents or something in the family, or it was a teacher that inspired them to pursue that path.
Yeah, that's interesting, because when I was in high school, I was taking an art class, and I'm from Vincennes, Indiana. It's a small town too.
Yeah.
Like southern Indiana, sorry. But in Vincennes is, of course, Vincennes University, and we had a girl come and talk to the class, and she was an art major at Vincennes University, and I had never heard of anybody being an art major. I did not know that you could actually major in art. I was dumbfounded. I was like, what? We can major in art? I am doing that. Okay. So, yeah, that happened in high school too. That's what inspired me to go get my art degree. I'm not doing that now, but right now I'm interviewing artists. So now, say what town you're from again?
Etna Green.
Edna Green.
Or it's ETNA. Etna is 2 words.
ETNA Green. So you're from Edna Green. You're inspired in high school by your art teacher, and then you went to Purdue. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Then you taught.
I did.
Art. Now, how long did you teach?
3 years.
3 years?
Yeah.
What grade?
I taught kindergarten through 6th grade. Yeah, I loved it.
You loved it?
I loved it. Yeah, I really did love it. And it's interesting because I think this is terrible to say, but if they had paid more, I very well might still be in teaching. I mean, I think one of the only things I didn't like about teaching was I didn't like the salary. And that's part of what motivated my next move in life is I went to law school.
Okay.
And a lot of the reason why I went to law school, and I mean, this is, I don't know, I guess it's sort of weird to be so honest, I suppose, but I want to live a comfortable life. I want to move through life and be financially stable. And, great teachers, it's super unfortunate, but, I was a third-year teacher. I think my third-year teacher salary was probably around $33,000 a year. I could be the best teacher in the state, and I'm not saying I was, but hypothetically, I still make $33,000 a year. And you think about other professions, what other professions do the best. And so I was thinking, it was like, well, maybe I'll go become a lawyer because great lawyers make great money. And so that's what motivated the next move is I went to law school with my little brother. And it's kind of crazy sitting in a building 10 years later, and my brother even right now as we speak, has a meeting with the client in the building, and I'm over on this side of the building doing art things. So yeah.
Now, what inspired your interest in law?
Well, so, and it's if I was not doing anything, or if I was doing anything else but art right now, I would totally be practicing law, and I would want to be a litigator. I would want to do jury trials, and that's so I'm an avid chess player. I've played chess almost daily since I was in the 8th grade. I still play daily, and law, especially litigation, is a lot like chess. And even
now, explain litigation.
So just in the courtroom, when you're in a trial and you're in front of it doesn't necessarily have to be a jury. It could be a bench trial, but just arguing the merits of a case. And being an advocate for your client, and just going in there and passionately arguing for your side of the case. And so I never got that experience as a licensed attorney. I haven't presented before a jury before. I watched my brother. He had a jury trial a couple weeks ago. And so I went, and I just wanted to be like, put me in, coach. I mean, it looked so fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so fascinating, and questioning a witness and then cross-examining witnesses, and I mean, there's so many little tactics and strategies, and the law can often be fairly complex or nuanced, and I'm fascinated by it all, and I love what I do today more, so I continue to do that. But if I wasn't doing this, I would be doing that.
Huh. Now, where did you go to law school?
So my brother and I, we wanted to go together. That was kind of the deal. So we applied to a bunch of different law schools all over the Midwest, and there was only 2 we got into that overlapped. And so we both got into Dayton, Ohio, and then we both got into Valparaiso University. And Valparaiso is northern Indiana. It was not very far away from where we grew up. My brother had actually attended Valparaiso undergrad, and so we just decided to go there. And so that's where we went.
How was your experience in law school?
To sum it up, I would go back in a second. I loved it. Like, I loved law school. I love learning. I would go back and get a zillion degrees if I had the time and they were free. Like, I love it. I mean, I consider myself probably a lifelong learner. I think that's one of the things I love about painting the most is, I'm 9 years into doing this professionally, and I just feel like I'm scratching the surface of information. I mean, that to me is motivating and inspiring.
Did your family members, were they interested in law? Like, where does this come
No, so
from?
they were farmers. I think, I don't know specifically. I mean, there was never, like, when I was growing up, I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to become a lawyer. I mean, it really, the idea sprung up when my brother was graduating undergrad. He's like, I'm going to go to law school. And it just made so much sense to me at the time. That I was in the right headspace. I kind of knew that teaching wasn't going to be my lifelong solution to my professional career. And so I was open-minded to different ideas. I think at the time, before my brother called, I thought maybe getting a master's in administration and then maybe becoming a principal or, going in the admin side of the school system. I did at that time have a fascination in local politics. I always thought, we grew up outside of Warsaw, Indiana, and I always thought it would be cool to be a mayor of like a mid-level, a mid-sized town like that. I always thought that would be really a fascinating career path. So there was some sort of parallels, so there wasn't a specific moment or influence or, it was just sort of a culmination of a lot of different things happening in my life to where that just made sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, I like to try to poke and prod people's brains. Where did this interest come from?
Yeah.
Was it like a genetic predisposition or what? So, now during law school, how did you get back into painting?
Well, so going as a non-traditional student, I really was motivated to be the best version of myself possible, and just studying like crazy and really diving deep into really understanding, I guess that wasn't a good way to say it, but we spent pretty much all day, every day in the library just studying. Okay. And so during that first semester, late into the first semester, I just wanted to do something that wasn't studying. And we studied pretty much every single night. And that, you hear people say that, and sometimes that seems like an exaggeration, but I think for most 1L students, I think you're scared so shitless that you're just like, all the information, it's so funny how like a class like civil procedure just almost seems like a foreign language when you're in that first semester, but then, after practicing for a while, it seems almost like your first language. Like, it's so weird how it just goes from so unfamiliar and foreign and just like these abstract ideas to something just like that seems so straightforward that you're like, how did I ever have difficulty comprehending that? So I was just studying a ton and needed a break and started painting.
So tell me how late would you study? Like how would you get sleep?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, we weren't so crazy that we weren't sleeping, but I mean, if I had to guess, we probably were, and my brother could probably remember better than I do. I would say we were at the library every night till probably at least between 8 and 10 every single night.
Not.
So, I mean, that's not crazy, but when you have a full class schedule all day and you're on the go, I mean, doing that every day for a semester, it wears on you. You know, you're just kind of like, and that's what happened. I was just like, I don't want to go to the library tonight. And so I painted, and those paintings, I ended up selling them to some of my classmates, and that's kind of what got the ball rolling.
And then how long ago was this? What time?
So I went to law school in 2007, graduated 2010.
What started happening after that? After you started selling, generating income?
Yeah, I started selling to my classmates, and I'm bashful and shy and quiet is not something I would describe myself. I'm kind of a go-getter. I'm not necessarily like loud and boisterous as much as just sort of like, I don't make it a secret that I want to sell paintings, you know? And so my second year of law school, one of my buddies had just gotten his MBA and suggested I start doing some Facebook advertising. And so we started doing that. And so we started doing paid ads. And that's kind of a whole long story short, but that got the ball rolling into selling more and more and more. And that was 2008. And in 2009, I think I sold 200-ish pieces in 2008, mostly through Etsy or Facebook. And I didn't have, like, I think like a lot of early artists, you think you need gallery representation to become like legitimized. I don't necessarily think that, I think that's maybe a misnomer. But, that's kind of what I thought I had to do. So in 2009, I just started carrying paintings into art galleries. And I was just like, I kid you not. I literally took physical paintings into art galleries and was just like, and because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what galleries were good, what galleries were bad, and like what made a gallery good, what made a gallery bad. You're just like, art gallery, that's good. That's where I want my art to be,
Yeah.
And so, there was just so much I did not know. And I, in hindsight, I'm so thankful for not knowing any of that stuff, because I think if I had known what I know today, I never would have had the guts to do any of what I did. And so I think that blind naiveness was such an asset. And so I ended up, when I walked paintings into a gallery in Lafayette, Indiana, she gave me a show. And I think that show was within 6 weeks. She had an artist back out. She's like, I'll give you a shot, but you've got to build a body of work in 6 weeks. And so that was the summer of 2009. That was my first exhibit. I had 50 paintings in that show, and I'd have to go.
You create all those in 6 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, well, I might have had a handful done, but
okay.
I mean, I did the majority of the show in 6 weeks. And I think we ended up selling 45 of those 50 paintings in that show. And so she quickly gave me a show in 2010. In the 2010 show, we showed just as well, and then, I parted ways with that gallery. But, I mean, the long short of it, by the time I graduated law school, I had built quite a bit of momentum and a name for myself selling art.
How did you get such a name for you? How did you sell the 45 paintings?
So,
what is that like?
Well, that was luck. And I would say what happens is, now that I know a lot more about selling art, is this is an audio podcast, so I would love to write this on a board or something. But the way that I think about selling art, and I'll try to describe this as straightforward and simply as I can, is there's almost sort of three main buckets of like what gives a piece of art value. And what happens is the three buckets essentially. So you have the price of the work, so whatever the painting cost. You have the aesthetic of the work, the quality of the work, the painting itself. So what does it look like on its face? Then the third bucket is the reputation of the artist. And what happens is if there's a disconnect anywhere in the three, you can essentially still sell a painting, but what happens is two of the three start to have to match. So if you have only one of the three, you're probably never going to sell art. If you have two of the three, you have a shot at selling painting. If you have three of the three, you're going to sell out shows. And what happens is that first show, I didn't have the reputation bucket. What I did have was high quality work, and the prices matched. And so what happened was when you have those two, that's an impulse buy. That's where people don't know anything about you, but they look at the painting, they look at the price of the work. There's not a disconnect between those two. They're like, okay, that painting, like right now in this room, if I was like, that painting's $100, would you walk out with it? You might impulse buy that. You didn't come in here expecting to pay $100 for that painting, but all of a sudden when I tell you it's $1,800, like you're like, maybe I'm not going to impulse buy that. Maybe now there needs to be that third bucket connected. Well, what's the reputation of the artist? How established are they? What have they done with their name? And so what happened with that first show, and I think the reason why we sold so much, is because there wasn't a disconnect between the price of my work and the quality of the work, which essentially means I sold that work for very, very cheap. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm totally okay with that. And so, and now what I've done is over the years, I've experimented a ton with my pricing to really understand. And where I have found a lot of success, and the reason why I do sell a lot of paintings, is because as my reputation has grown, I haven't grown my prices to match the reputation. And so what happens is when people come to my shows now, a lot of people who come historically at the Harrison Center that still have no idea who I am, all of a sudden they're looking at the work and they're what they can impulse buy because the price and the aesthetic of the work. But part of sort of that impulse buy happening is because I have built a reputation and a name for myself over the years with, obviously some level of success, I'm selling a lot of that work to an existing client base now. So then you walk into a show, and I mean, hopefully this is what's going to happen on Friday. I mean, I don't want to jinx myself or predict too far in the future. Historically, what has happened is the people who know me and who support me, they come in and they buy work. And then all of a sudden you get a room full of people who don't necessarily know anything about me. They couldn't even tell you the name of the artist on the wall, but they look around the room and there's, 30, 40, 50 red dots within an hour or two of an opening of the show. And all of a sudden they look at the painting, they see the price, and they're looking at all the validation around the room that pricing, and they don't even need to know my reputation anymore if they like what they see. I mean, I sell a lot of art that way. So I've just tried to always be very honest, very fair, and very realistic with my pricing.
And now, did you understand that during this first show?
No.
Or did that take you years to figure out?
I mean, that's taken years and years and years of really thinking about why do I find success and others don't. And what's a lot interesting, like what I think is really interesting is I think two things are happening that I'm doing that others, if they're not finding the success that they want to find, that I'm doing that they're probably not doing, is my work is, I would say, very affordable. I've always kept it really affordable. And the other is simultaneously, I am working my tail off building up the biggest reputation I can. I'm trying to do every single thing, every single interview, every single event, and I'm really trying to diversify how people learn about my name. And so I think those two things combined, that's probably going to lend to some level of success.
I think that complex problem solving that you seem to say, because I can see how your interest in law and being obsessed with that kind of relates to how you run your business with your art, because it seems like you're able to reflect on all the complex things going on. And use that.
I think there's probably some truth in that. Mm-hmm. And I think self-reflection is important. I haven't always sold out shows. The first show that I really bombed was January 2015. It was my first Harrison Center main gallery show. And I had 39 paintings in that show and we sold 12. And I mean, that seems like a lot for most people, but as someone who lives off painting, I needed to sell more. Uh-huh. And so I really did a lot of thinking as to why didn't they sell? And I think what's interesting is just the pure math on that show. Those 12 conversions, I can't remember the exact number now, but I know the average price per conversion was over $700. And so, and today, my show last year, we sold 84 paintings the month of March. It was in the 300s. And so in 2015, I was almost, essentially, just for easy math, the paintings I was selling were twice as expensive as the paintings I was selling last year. But selling 12 versus selling 84 is a massive difference. And so when I did my 2016 show, what's interesting is the Indianapolis market, there's almost like a very specific pricing structure that I really, after years of being at the Harrison Center, you just watch the magic happen. And it's almost these price points. And so what happened was I felt like in 2015, I had the right price points. I had the right price points for the show. I had the wrong sizes of the paintings. I think there's a direct correlation between the size of the work and the price of the work. Like, just very simply, it's a lot easier to spend, let's just say, $300 on a painting that can fit above your couch that's, let's say, 2 feet by 4 feet versus $300 for maybe an 8x8 plein air painting that was done in San Francisco in an hour. I mean, two very, very different products. So what happened is from 2015 to 2016 is in Microsoft Excel, I didn't change the prices of my work. I changed the column of the sizes. And so in 2016, I almost doubled the size at the price point for every single painting. And I had a collector give me a little bit of pushback, and they said, well, you lowered your prices. And I would say, I guess first, if you want to think of it exactly like that, I guess, yeah, I lowered my prices. What I did was I adjusted to where I thought the market was going to start to give me, where I was going to start to sell more paintings. And that happened. So the second year, there were 51 paintings in the exhibit, and we sold 39 on opening night. So the math worked out. And
you're referring to a hot sheet earlier.
Oh,
I think you started talking about like getting into Microsoft Excel.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that thing. And this is something I heard you talk about on the Indiana Business Journal podcast as well.
So the hot sheet is essentially, it's a very primitive document where I keep my sales analytics. And so I don't have it. I usually actually have it on this little table. There's about 6 pages I print out. So right now I am going through the process of pricing this particular show. And so what I'm doing is I'm looking at my past performance from the last 7 years, and then I'm looking at this specific body of work, and I'm just making assessments on, where I believe these paintings are going to sell based upon the previous math. So the hot sheet, where that came from is my last real job. I guess it's a real job, but my last job in the corporate world as a corporate headhunter, they had what they called a hot sheet. And this was 2011. And this is before a lot of the technology CRMs have become popular now. I don't know what they use now, if they still use the hot sheet, but back then it was essentially just sort of this Microsoft Excel sheet that captured their sales analytics. And so, essentially, like for a painting, for example, there's just a couple of bullet points, the size of the painting, price of the painting. I do not keep track of how long it takes me. I don't really think people care about the time invested. I think they care more about what does the painting look like, whether that took an hour or whether that took 3 hours, because sometimes, then I keep track of the day I finish the painting and then the day I sell the painting. And so what happens then is keeping track of, how many days it takes to sell a painting. All of a sudden you can start to forecast off of that. So if I'm tracking at 97 days, which is essentially, just a little over 3 months to sell a painting, all of a sudden, if I have an inventory that's, becoming 3 months old, you can start to guess some of these are probably going to start to convert pretty soon. Or if I do 10 paintings today, a certain portion of that revenue I'm probably going to realize within 90 days. And so I've found that to be very valuable in really understanding where people give me money for my paintings. Because at the end of the day, I think a big misconception about the art world is people think that there's this whole existing demand for fine art. And I would say there is probably some very small existing demand. And I think most artists almost try to insert themselves into that existing demand. And I think what I'm trying to do is just completely create a whole new demand for my work and building clients that don't have a history of necessarily buying fine art, but now they're buying my art. And so I found that the hot sheet is just a really valuable tool that helps me achieve those goals.
Yeah. When I heard that interview, I was taking a statistics class at the time, learning how rewarding all that kind of math is, using data to, assess your paintings.
What was interesting about being at the Harrison Center is every once in a while there would be artists come through that had similar work to mine, just traditional plein air work, and I would put their shows in the hot sheet, and then I would compare their shows to my shows. And what's interesting between unsuccessful shows and my shows that are selling a lot, if I was to show you the two graphs side by side, there's actually a pretty common trend in those shows as to why they're not successful. And I mean, it's so weird. I mean, essentially on the graph, my shows almost go like this, and their shows go like this in terms of pricing. It's the most bizarre thing. But yeah.
Do you ever consider teaching a class about using these tools?
Yeah, and I think now that I have this space, I would consider doing that. And the farther I've gotten in my career, I'm not necessarily trying to be super secretive about how I do things. I think one of the biggest challenges in teaching others sort of how to do this is it takes a lot of discipline, and it takes years of effort before the information, because my wife, she worked in marketing and now she's in IT consulting, but she works with a lot of data and selling and marketing and kind of like at very high level for enterprise clients. But she always gives me a hard time because she's just like, well, your data sets are so small. I mean, compared to massive businesses or even medium-sized businesses who are making, hundreds, if not thousands of transactions a day. I mean, when you have that much data, it really becomes insightful. When I started capturing this kind of data, I was selling between 60 and 100 paintings a year. And that's not a very big sample size. So it doesn't start to become valuable until years later. And so to commit to doing something that isn't going to really become helpful for years, that's a hard pill to swallow. And so I'm just venture to guess. I've shown other people, really pretty deep in the weeds exactly how I do it. I know none of them utilize any of this.
Right. You'd have to get them to appreciate the value of long-term goals as opposed to short-term goals.
And this isn't the only path to success. I have tons and tons and tons and tons of friends who, are super successful. Maybe not tons and tons and tons. I have a lot of friends who are super successful artists. None of them dive this deep into the weeds and understanding how they make money. Okay. And they're just as successful, if not more successful.
Why do you think that is?
Well, because I think if nothing else, instinctually they've figured it out. Like instinctually over years of trial and error, they might not know like the exact square inch of like they're converting, but they know, like, I've been selling this size painting for 5 years, and when I price it at 300, people don't give me money. When I price it at 150, people give me money. It can be as straightforward as that. And so it doesn't have to be as sometimes maybe hard as I make it sound. It's just, for me, I find comfort in the understanding, and others don't necessarily need that understanding to find the level of comfort that they need.
Yeah, it just depends on your personality.
Totally.
Then.
So, because I think beyond the data, I think probably what's more helpful, where I think I could add more value in teaching others on sort of the business side of art is, I think, just really trying to drive in the idea, where do people give you money for your product repeatedly who are not your friends? Where is the price, like whatever this product is, whatever it looks like, you got to go find those people that love that. And you got to figure out, okay, now that you know what these people are that love what you do, where's the price point where they give you money for it? And like, and I think part of another reason why I hate saying successful. I'm not successful, and I don't know what, like, I don't want to, I'm trying to, like,
you don't like the word successful?
Well, it's like, I think there's a fine line between humility and then like an ego, right? And so like I want to continue to remain humble while also like, I mean, I sell a lot of paintings. And so, but I think a lot of people try to insert themselves into what or compare themselves to what other people are doing. And like, I've just never done that. And so like my plein air paintings are a fraction of the price of a lot of my competitors. And the quality is every bit of there. And a lot of artists would be like, well, you know, that's just too cheap. And I'm like, I mean, I give them pushback. I'm like, that's too cheap if you only sell 10 or 20 of them a year. You know, if you're selling 200 of them, I mean, I think you could probably make a decent living. And like the other is like, I mean, on a good day plein air painting, I mean, one of the days in San Francisco, I did 6 paintings. I did 24 hours in Minneapolis. I did 6 paintings, not because I'm trying to paint fast, because I am addicted to painting. Like I love painting. And when I went to Minneapolis, I didn't even have cold weather clothes. It was 7 degrees out the morning I painted this little tiny painting there. I literally didn't even have gloves. I put on a clean pair of socks, both socks on my right hand with a paintbrush to paint those paintings. And like, I mean, because I love it. I can sit here today and be like, I am as addicted to painting and the process of creating as I've ever been. Like I love it.
Mostly just you're addicted to it.
Yeah, and to me, like I was in Chicago, and what was the question? Oh, they asked me, I can't remember what they asked me. Not teaching, but they're like if I would, because I build my own plein air boxes, and I was at this plein air group, and they're like, oh my gosh, you should make and sell these. And I'm like, thank you for loving my box, but it's like, I want to be a painter, I don't want to be a box maker. You know, like I love that that you think I can sell this, and I probably could sell this, but my goal isn't to be a great box maker. My goal is to be a great painter. And I mean, that's just not, I don't want to make your box or your plein air box.
Yeah, man.
You know, like, so.
Well, the next question I have is actually, how did your experience from your childhood influence some decisions you've made?
Yeah, well, I think, so I grew up a farm kid, and I think most farm kids will attest to the fact that they witnessed their parents working tirelessly, especially through the fall and the spring. And there's a certain level of work ethic where I can remember my dad doing, I don't know if I guess I can't remember him doing 48-hour, maybe he did, I'm sure he probably did, but I can remember him just working 36 hours straight. You know, just driving right through, just on a tractor, and I mean probably even longer. But you know, seeing someone work so hard, I think that leaves an impression where if you really want something, you just have to work for it, and that's one of the things where, I mean, failure has never even really been an option. I don't think about failure at all. I don't even think it's possible-ish, because I think a lot of success is just through effort and perseverance. I mean, sometimes it's like early on when my paintings are super cheap, you know, it just means you have to hustle harder. And the way that I've been able to achieve more growth every single year in terms of sales, it's just been through making more and being more disciplined. And if, you know, 5 years ago, you would ask me, you know, do you work hard? I would have said, yeah. I mean, today I work harder, and I'm sure, and I hope, you know, 5 years from now I work even harder. And I think you can even see that in the math. I think it was, I can't remember which year it was, probably 14. I sold 67 paintings, and then I actually went to 97 paintings, and then I went to 126, then I went to 179, then I went to 201 or 202 2 years ago, and then I sold 226 paintings last year. And this year my target's at 250. And so, yeah, I mean, it just, you know, and I mean, that's a lot of painting, and a lot of painters paint that much. A lot of painters don't sell that much. And sometimes, you know, I do wonder, like, hypothetically, a gallery owner that retired, that's a really good friend and mentor of mine, he always gave me a lot of flack and pushback. He's like, why don't you just do that same amount of painting, you know, cut the sales in half and double the prices? So, you know, hypothetically, the idea is that your revenue stays the same, but you're getting more per piece. And the reason why I just don't do that is I personally pretty much exclusively sell in the Indianapolis market. I don't think the market can support it. I don't think I have done enough to where my reputation is big enough, broad enough, my client base is big enough to support that idea. And that's why I don't succumb to it. I was like, that idea in a box, in a shell, that's great. I really don't know, and maybe I could, and maybe he's wrong, make a living doing that idea. I mean, it sounds great. I just don't think that's the reality of what it's like to live as a working artist in Indianapolis.
Just overall, you don't think you could ever get to that point?
I think I'm getting to that point.
Okay.
Like, I think, but what's been interesting is as I've been growing, when I hit those numbers that he thinks my painting should be selling for, I'm hoping to not be selling 50 paintings a year, 100 paintings a year. I'm hoping I'm selling 200 paintings a year.
Oh, so just still
And
creating a lot.
Yeah, and
just
I think
making more.
I think part of why I don't see my volume numbers in terms of creating is because at this point there is no way I see plein air painting leaving my artistic practice. I just love it too much.
On your LinkedIn account, you have listed as your specialty making it happen. Let's elaborate on that.
Yeah,
what does that mean from
man,
your perspective? Which I kind of already know by now. I think we pretty much learned how he makes it happen.
It's interesting because I honestly forgot that was even on there. I took LinkedIn off my phone years ago, wow. I don't even know what's happening on that platform anymore. So hearing that is funny, but I think there's probably a lot of truth in that, because I think that if you're going to be entrepreneurial, you just have to make it happen.
Yeah.
And that by almost any means necessary.
And that thing that you're addicted to, because it's not just that you're not just successful, you're addicted to it.
Right.
It's what I'm gathering.
Yeah.
It's like you just get such a reward from it that you have to keep doing it in 7-degree weather, doesn't matter.
Right.
So.
Yeah. It's interesting because, like, if I wasn't hypothetically getting paid to do that, and I don't even think of it like that in the moment, I wasn't going out there because, like, I have to make money today. I went out there because I'm like, I'm in a brand new city. I've never been here. I don't know when I'm flying back. I do have my paints with me. Let's go make it happen.
Yeah.
Let's go. And so I was actually supposed to paint that. The reason why I was unprepared, I was supposed to paint in another artist's studio that weekend, and she broke her leg or foot, unfortunately, and so she had to cancel. And so here I am in this different town. And I'm like, well, here we go. And so, it was super fun.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
sorry.
I was gonna say I can't remember. It was probably 4 weeks ago. Because leading up to a show like this, there's so much. I don't even know how to describe the time suck of all the ancillary stuff. The framing, the emails, just I'm trying to think. This year is a little bit different. Making labels, and there's so much time and energy. The planning of the event, and
all those intricate things.
Right, that takes so much time. Where I think it was 4 weeks ago. I totally played hooky, and I was like, I do not want to do. It was a Friday. I was like, I do not want to do what I need to do, and so I went and I made 6 paintings that Friday, and so but I didn't make those 6 paintings.
Still did something.
But it was weird because that was me playing hooky. I was procrastinating. First of all, I was not painting on the paintings I probably should have been painting on, but I was just like, I just want to paint. I just want to go out here and make some paintings, and I don't care if they turn out. I don't care if. I just want to go have some fun. And so even Saturday, I had a little bit of time in Chicago when I was off, and I was up there, I was doing demos. And so I had my paints with me, and I was like, well, I got to go for lunch. And then I went and ate lunch and then made a painting right after. So
it's crazy, people.
Yeah.
That's funny. No, it's funny. We talk about you being addicted to painting and attributing that to your overall success. And it helps put into perspective a little bit about my story, because I went to art school and I tried to pursue art full time. And I just did not have that reward feeling, you know, after about a year of giving it up.
Yeah.
I realize now, like, it just wasn't that rewarding for me. I wasn't passionate about it. I was not addicted to it. And I think I felt like I had to keep pursuing it because I went to art school. So it's just interesting to hear that perspective that, you know, because I don't generate such reward from that's probably why I never really got out there. Like I never.
Yeah. What's been interesting about the farther I get into my career, one of the events I was at recently, and it was interesting because there's a panelist of super professional artists, and you know, hearing a lot of the questions, you know, coming from the audience, and it just was. I mean, I don't want to. I mean, I guess I'm not going to call anyone out specifically or even the questions, but it's sometimes like if you have to ask these questions at all, you might not be suited to make it. You know, and it was interesting because, like, you know, I've had a lot of mentors over the years, and I have had so much help in my career, but like I've never had to question whether or not I have what it takes to make it. You know, like I don't know. It's weird. Like
interesting.
It's in there.
Yeah. Interesting.
And it's weird because like even, you know, buying this building and, you know, taking on more risk that way, over the last year, as we really have synced into this thing in terms of just like, it's like becoming a reality and like, this is really, you know, where we're headed. You know, I've questioned a lot of things about the decision necessarily, like, but one of the things that and not like it's kind of hard to describe, but like if anything, this entire endeavor, like as like sort of the ups and the downs and the struggles of it all, like it's like strengthened my resolve. Like it's really reinforced the idea that like it's sort of like, holy shit, now I have to make this work. You know, like I have no choice now.
Holding you accountable.
Totally.
Yeah,
and it's like it's also like there you almost have to put a lot of trust in sort of yourself. It's like I have what it takes to make this happen. I mean I guess I kind of can elaborate on that and what that means, but like one of the things we haven't talked about yet in the discussion is just sort of like what is this space going to become? What is it going to be used as? Because I've called it Vining Gallery. And so I am positioning it in the market as a gallery. But, you know, I've been an artist that has built my entire career outside of galleries, outside of traditional galleries, outside of brick and mortar. I don't have gallery representation. I have not particularly, I love the Harrison Center. They're the rare exception to, I mean, they are the best. But beyond the Harrison Center, you know, I haven't found that galleries tend to add value to my career. And I think there's a lot of different reasons why that is. And I find it super ironic that an artist who I don't really like working with galleries is opening up a gallery. And so what does that mean and what's that going to look like? If I've learned anything from the last 10 years of living as an artist, or 9, is I can't predict the future. I don't really know what the future holds. What I think something is going to become, it's going to become something completely different. Life has thrown me so many curveballs. I tend to roll with them. But I do believe in the Indianapolis market, one of the things, and I mean, I'm not a young buck anymore, I suppose. I'm 38 years old. But I would actually consider myself still early career artist. You know, I have a lot. I hope I have a lot of life left and a lot of painting miles to go. And when I think about as big as my shows have gotten historically at the Harrison Center, and I think about the Indianapolis market, I think about, well, you know, what's next for someone like me? What's the next step? And I would say in Indianapolis, we have very obvious, maybe better artist resume venues. You know, you have the Arts Council, you have the IMA, you have the Art Center in Broad Ripple. I mean, you have the State Museum, beautiful facilities that, I mean, would look great on anyone's resume. But these venues, they don't have a history of selling, like really selling art. And I truly believe that if you're a living artist, a working artist, selling art, I think the Harrison Center is the best venue in town to go sell paintings out of. And so when I think about that, and I think about at 38 years old, I'm, in the Indianapolis market, I've sort of reached the height, it's like, what's the next step for me in the city? Where outside of the Harrison Center can I go sell like this? Where has a big enough client base, that or, a history of, advocacy for their artists that can really, support an artist like me going in there? And I would say it doesn't exist. And in terms of the selling aspect, I mean, I don't want to knock any of the other spaces. I think there's so many spaces doing amazing things, but what I don't see a lot of these spaces doing beyond the Harrison Center, they're not cultivating new patrons. And I think that's something that the Harrison Center is doing differently than pretty much everywhere else. They're actively bringing in people who support art, that buy art, that support us. And so one of the things I want this space to become is I do want it to become a hub for people who are really interested in throwing really ambitious shows and, that want to have the opportunity to sell.
So you're going to host shows then? That's something you kind of have a vision?
Yeah,
for?
but
Okay.
I love the idea of less is more. And so I'm not going to try to compete with First Fridays. Even my show, I'm not opening it on a First Friday. I'm doing a second Friday. And
that's right. Uh-huh.
Partially because, just so many of the people I love in Indianapolis are artists or art patrons or art, affiliated with the arts. And I want them to have the opportunity to come to my events. Mm-hmm. And, if I learned anything at being 6 years at the Harrison Center, among other things, is that it's very difficult on a First Friday as an artist to get out of that building. And I think similarly, most artists and people in the city, on First Fridays, you kind of have your routine. And so that's, when I host shows and host events, I'm going to do it outside of the scope of that because I want all those people who have supported me so much through the years to have the ability to still patronize wherever they go, but also come here. Mm-hmm. And so I do want to host shows. I don't quite know what that's going to look like, how many that's going to be. I don't have any specific goals in mind other than I have kind of started writing down some level of just like sort of mission statement philosophy. But I think the common thread is probably, it's going to go beyond quality. I want to show high quality work, not just traditional work, but also contemporary work. I paint in both veins. I've never let, anything sort of define what I create. And I don't want anything to sort of specifically and narrowly describe what the space could become. But to me, if I'm going to show someone's work beyond the aesthetic of their work, whatever their work looks like, I think the type of people I want to show are committed. They're all in, and and what I mean by that is not necessarily, making a living as an artist. Probably most likely, but, as you float through the art world for so long, so many people come, so many people go, and, some people, and I would say a few people, they have the grit and they have what it takes to persevere through all the ups and downs because deep down that passion inside them is going to fuel their success. And that's the type of people I want to show.
I see.
People I truly believe in. And that doesn't necessarily mean later career. I can think of someone in our community that's super early career that I just have no doubt in my mind she has what it takes to become as successful as anyone else.
I see.
And whether or not she'd want to show with me, that's a different story.
You'd be able to spot it in other people.
Well, that idea of it takes one to know one, there's probably a little truth in that. Mm-hmm. So that is a component of what's happening. Another component that I would like to use the space for is teaching, and not just myself teaching. I probably will teach some. I don't necessarily want to teach a lot, but what I do want to do is bring in nationally recognized artists to teach in the space. So in the last 18 months, I've hosted 3 workshops. All 3 of those workshops I've actually done with Butler University, or I've done at Butler University. They've been really good to me there. But now I want to host those in this venue. So continue to do that and continue to build on that. And I'm already talking to a variety of different national artists. And this year I've just been trying to get through my first show in this building. Hopefully by 2021, I can publish an annual teaching schedule and publish what workshops we'll be hosting in 2021, so people can be prepared for that. And that is something I'm super excited about, and selfishly so. And, and I think all 3 workshops I brought in, it's 2 different artists. I brought in one twice. They're people I want to personally learn from. So there's a very selfish motivation for doing that. And
that
so
makes sense.
So I'm going to continue.
You wouldn't open up a business unless you were the first person in line for it. that idea.
Yeah, totally. And so there's an artist I know of on the East Coast that doesn't teach workshops, and I'm hoping to trick him into doing it. Just because I want to watch him paint. I want to hear what's going through his head, and because sometimes I think it's interesting because people talk about style in art. What's your style? What's that look like? And I'm not trying to emulate other artists, but sometimes the deeper I get into my career, artists can say these little nuggets of gold that just all of a sudden, it's like a light bulb, and you're like, sometimes those nuggets of gold, it's worth the price of admission tenfold. And I can give you a specific example. As I was watching this painter paint, and he just said something kind of fleeting, but he was talking about the substrate, the panel he was painting on, and he had about 10 different panels, and they all already had a little bit of paint and texture on them, and they were all extremely different. And he started holding up each one of the 10 to the scene he was about to paint. And I asked him what he was doing, and he was just like, he goes, I'm selecting the specific panel I'm going to use to make the painting. And I was just like, well, why? What? I had never seen anybody do that. And he just said, he's like, it's a lot easier to make something interesting from something that's already interesting. And it was just like a light bulb went off, and I was like, that is so wild. And I don't do that on every single painting, but back in the back now, I definitely have some small panels that over time I just keep adding a little painting to.
So he would pick the panel, systematically pick it.
Yeah, and sometimes like the one he ended up, it was sort of a rainy day, sort of a super green, muddy water scene, and the panel he picked, it already had sort of a lot of these moody, muddy greens and textures in it. And so a lot of that panel, he didn't even really have to paint too much into it on the bottom section, because it kind of already existed. So he was sort of exploiting what was on that panel, and by the time he was done, you'd never know that a portion of that panel was just almost like an abstract expressionist painting before he ever even started. And that was, and just sort of ideas like that, I'm not trying to paint like that guy, but you could tell there's things going on back there that that's good info.
Inspiring, more or less.
Yeah, totally.
Anybody else that particularly inspires you? Some people have a go-to person.
Yeah, I can name specific people. Some of them I've already kind of mentioned in passing. There's so many painters locally that are just such good friends that I've painted so much with, and there's awesome people. But I would say, beyond the living artist, I would say one of the biggest things that inspires me and fuels a lot of sort of ancillary creative endeavors is my passion for Indiana art history. And so we have a very rich history of badass painters living and working out of our state. And not just great for Indiana, not just great for the Midwest, not just great for America. Great painters in the broader world scope. These guys were some of the best painters living. And the Hoosier Group and sort of their legacy, is there's paintings in this room that I've, very directly and intentionally been looking at the Indiana Impressionists and their work and really trying to channel their voice in my work. And so I think that's, one area of, where I seek inspiration that may be a little bit unexpected.
Mm-hmm. When you get inspired, do you generate images? Say, if you hear a phrase or something, do you generate imagery?
Maybe.
It's a side question. I'm wondering.
Maybe. I don't really know, actually. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. Like, I'm not one of those artists who is like carrying a sketchbook 24/7 and jotting down ideas and jotting down like little notes and that's never really been me. I've never done that. But I will say sometimes, especially like driving, I drove to Chicago Saturday at sunrise and drove home last night at sunset. And I mean, I see scenes all the time that I want to paint. That I'm like, oh my gosh, I just kind of want to stop on the side of the road right now and paint that. And so like, I mean, that's a very visual, like sort of response to what's happening in the moment. But like, in terms of like, does that create like a secondary image of, I'm usually just responding to the moment. Like, I would love to paint that. Like, I mean, even these big front windows in the building, at certain times of day, early morning or late night, the golden hour, I mean, looking out these windows, how warm it is in this room, how warm it is out there. I mean, it's just like, you're like, I can't even paint this. Like, I don't even know how you comprehend like how to paint this much glow and magic. So that stuff I find super inspiring.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, just physically in the moment, actually in nature.
Totally.
Get your blood heart pumping. Like, I gotta paint this. Stop the car.
Yeah. And that's happened. I kid you not. I mean, there have been times where I've impulse painted things just because I'm like, I don't know if I'll see this again.
Man, that's definitely been inspiring.
Thank you.
It's just hearing people talk about how they're so passionate about something. It just further inspires me to keep doing the things that I think are inspiring.
Good.
So, yeah. Well, my last question is kind of a random thing, not necessarily about anything painting, but is there anything else like fun or interesting that you do?
I used to have a lot of hobbies. I used to do so many different things. I still play chess. I mentioned that earlier. I still play chess daily. I love playing chess. I mean, I'm married. We have 2 dogs.
Okay.
We walk our dogs a lot. We travel quite a bit. I feel fortunate in that. And I don't know, just spending time with family.
Mm-hmm. And your wife, you said she's in marketing?
Yeah, she worked at marketing agencies in Indianapolis. Then she went into IT consulting, sort of in that. She does not work for Salesforce. She works for like Salesforce partners, or she has. So she's kind of in that Salesforce-y world,
right?
And the deeper she gets into her career, the more abstract it becomes. So I don't quite know what she does anymore. And what's funny is, well, not funny. I mean, what's sometimes sad or a bummer, I guess. I don't know, but like, when people hear that my wife is in marketing, like, especially, she's not really yet, but anyways, they're always like, well, she must be the one that's fueling all your success. She must have this like secret sauce that like, that's why you're selling so much art, is your wife's a marketer. And I'm like, my wife doesn't touch my business. And like, some of her past clients have been like IBM. Like, marketing for IBM is like a completely different thing than like marketing. Like, so much of what artists we do, it is so heavily relationship driven. And I think that's not marketing as much as that's just being a person out in the world, shaking as many hands as possible and trying to make yourself as memorable as possible to every single person you meet. Yeah. That's not a secret sauce. That's not like, I'm putting, $10 into Facebook ads with this very specific photo and language, because I tried all of that. And I found some level of success doing all that, but it's not, in my personal opinion, that's just not the right way to build an art career.
Yeah. So. And some people have that personality and some people just don't.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps it up today, man. I really appreciate you having this
thank you for the
conversation
time.
with me.
It's been fun.
We had that little issue with the cord earlier because I was irresponsible last time. I do not know where the thing is, but
that's okay.
Yeah. It was definitely inspiring talking to you. Let the listeners know, because I'm going to release this episode tomorrow.
Okay.
So let the listeners know what time.
Yeah, so it's Friday night, March 13th, 6 to 10 p.m. It's 2620 East 10th Street. I'll publish a parking map probably on Thursday. We have a few businesses that are going to let us use their parking lots, but there's street parking all around. So, I mean, you can park on both sides of 10th Street. I'm looking down the street right here. I mean, there's parking all around this building. So we do have a parking lot in back. It probably holds maybe 8 cars. It'll probably just be all my family back there. I mean,
right.
My first event, I have family coming in. I have people flying in from all over the country. So, it's gonna be a crazy night.
Okay, I'm gonna try to come out with my kids. So I don't have anything else going on that night. So I thought it'd be perfect.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Come out, everybody. Come and see Justin's work.
Free,
get a chance to
family
talk
friendly.
To him. You can ask him about any of these topics we were discussing. And nice. I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Thanks again for listening, and I hope you join me on the next episode of Artist Solace. You can find Artist Solace on Facebook. Go on Facebook, type in Artist Solace Podcast, and be sure to like the page. Follow me on Instagram at Artist Solace Podcast as well, although my Instagram page isn't nearly as active, but I am working on it. Subscribe to Artist Solace on iTunes. And you also have the option to just go directly to the website at www.artistsolacepodcast.com. Once again, I am Jade Haggard, your host here at Artist Solace Podcast. Bye-bye.